G is a trauma-informed and peer support, trained yoga, fitness, and wellness educator with a colorful past. I don't know where this dark sense of humor and a fierce passion for bringing wellness practices to law enforcement, first responders, combat veterans, active duty, and pre- and post-retirement populations. Ooh, that was a long sentence.
I know.
She also volunteers for a national nonprofit called the Battlin' Betties. Now, right away when I think of the Battling Betties, I look back at that old poster. Lady with the kerchief tied around her head. We can do it. That's Steve.
Picture shot. Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Guilty as charged.
They have a mission of trying to bring awareness about PTSD and suicide among veterans and first responders, as well as to foster patriotism and celebrate, honor, and remember those veterans who have served. She is a member of Cooper's Troopers, a United States Marine Corps veteran group. I'm sorry.
You all of you have something to say after that.
She is a public safety peer support specialist, heavily involved in public safety and veterans events throughout the city. She is currently recovering from her 5th spine surgery. She teaches about pain and how to stay alive with that pain. She lives in Denver with her husband Seth and Kitty. So let's give a real hearty welcome for T. Oh, no, I'm not going to steal your...
Your hair's different since the last time we seen you.
I'm also walking a little bit better.
Yeah, you are. Good for you.
All right, hang on one sec. I'm gonna record this as evidence for myself later, because I like to pretend that I don't do things. All right, so. Is this good? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, say, I found a penny. I'm gonna put on my, they're trifocals, let's just call them what they are. I think they're calling them progressives right now, but. I can't see you and I can't see down.
Probably a blessing.
So, thank you so much, Stan, for inviting me to speak, and John and I have had the pleasure of getting to know each other a little bit over email. One of the only things I remember from my college education was that ministry is a joyful yes to God. And so when I am asked to do something, no matter what the fear inside or how nervous I am, if it feels worthy to me, I say yes. So I stand before you nervous, but I will do my best to stay on point. All right, now I can see you. All right, so explain the name real quick. My first name is Teresita. Teresita Sr., my mother is here. They came from California. And my maiden name is Mahoney. So you can imagine, you can just fill in the blanks on that story, Teresita Mahoney growing up. They never really knew what to call or make of me. And I married a man named Seth Blair, whose original last name was Blaustein before they decided to gentrify that name. So I've always imagined that Teresita Mahoney Blaustein would be a fun way to be introduced somewhere. But I go by T. And if you call me anything else than T, I won't answer you, so that's a good excuse. Or I'm in trouble and I'm at the hospital or something if I'm calling Teresita. So a secret is that I am not a veteran. I've been in my own battles and wars, though. I am a suicide survivor, and there is a story behind the story I'm going to tell you tonight. So I call that my cockroach story, and the short version is you can't kill me. So there's a lot of letters after my name, but the ones I'm going to focus on tonight are the complex PTSD part. And so I'm just going to rewind real quick and tell you what makes me stand before you today. On Tuesday, July 7th of 2009, at about 6 o'clock in the evening, I was full-time employed working for a real estate developer, and I was also starting my own personal training business. So in other words, I was a success. By 7 o'clock that same evening, I got T-boned by a bus. And the bus won. And I'd like to say that it was as sexy as it sounds. It really was not a terrible accident, but it was a bus against my little Toyota Echo. And it absolutely leveled me. Not just physically, because it did render me unable to stand and walk and run and dance and do the things that I like to do, but I also could not work. And that meant that I had no ability to escape this. And it also leveled me emotionally. So for me, I had perfected the art of pushing down all of my stuff and pretending like it never existed or that I was over it. And I liken this bus accident to a critical incident in which my life changed. So I was kind of surprised that all of these ghosts started coming back from my past. And not being able to run and dance meant that I had to address them. A couple things I like to clarify about the bus accident. The first is there was no alcohol involved, thank God. I'm 10 years sober now. And the other thing is I did not run away with a giant settlement from the bus case. I had a bus case, and I was ill-prepared for the deposition. While in the deposition, I started to have a panic attack, and I thought my entire life was going to be on trial. So I started to cry when the bus attorneys asked me about my ex-husband, and the attorney that I had assigned kicked me under the table, which only made things worse. And when I turned to my left and looked down at his yellow notepad, in blue he had written the word F-U-C-K about 1,000 times. So within a couple of minutes, I called a recess to that deposition and I dropped the case. The bus had indeed won at that point, which was devastating, but I think might have killed me at that time. So, oh, John, I forgot to, is it this one? All right, so this gives you a little visual of the before and after. Before the bus accident, I was vibrant, I was strong, I had about 15 more pounds on me. And after the bus accident, it just kind of whittled away at my spirit and my body. Right after the accident, I had my first spine surgery, which was the conservative effort to not go further and give me any fusions. And the only exercise that my doctors would allow me to do was yoga. I hated yoga. I took yoga, laid on the floor with people, and I was asked to breathe. And I was asked to breathe and feel my body. And then I was asked to continue doing that, and it was the most uncomfortable thing I had ever experienced. I'd rather go back to the gym. So on the floor of the yoga studios, though, something told me to keep going. And I had a teacher named Misha who said something that really stopped me in my tracks. She was speaking about chronic pain. And she asked us, the class, is the pain that you're experiencing happening right now? Or might it be the ghost of pain that you're used to having? Or could it also be the anxiety of the pain that you expect is to come? That really shattered my thoughts about the concept of pain and what it might mean in the body as well as in the mind and the spirit. So I kept going. And in 2011, I had a neck fusion and a lower back fusion. They were 5 months apart, so I was stuck in the house for almost a year. And a teacher encouraged me to take a yoga anatomy course online, and I thought, what do I have to lose? When I started taking that anatomy course, I was stunned. My notes are covered in tears. The idea that I had the same heart and the same lungs and the same breath as when I was little, and throughout all of that cockroach story of mine, really hit home for me. So I kept going despite not knowing where I was going. Too many things here. Okay. So it surprised me when I was putting these slides together for John how much I've done and how much has happened in my life, because I have a very amazing skill of compartmentalizing and sort of minimizing things, I guess. My yoga teacher, Misha, asked me to take a training. It was called Yoga Warriors International. And this was specifically how to teach yoga to combat veterans or to veterans who are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. Initially I said no, and then I said my joyful yes to God and went. Our teacher was a Vietnam veteran himself. His name was Barry, and he's still here, alive. And I took that course and realized that I was not a good teacher and I needed that stuff. So I left kind of thinking, thank you, but I'm never going to do that. Something told me to call Barry about a month later, and I asked him if I could observe a class at the vet center. 3 weeks after observing that class, Barry called and left me a voicemail and told me he was having a stroke. And he took so long to respond about the stroke that he wasn't expected to live. So I visited him in the hospital, and he was sitting with his wife, Donna. He could not speak, but he had drawn a little angel on a piece of paper. And one arrow was pointing towards Donna, and I said, yes, Donna's your angel. And the other arrow was pointing towards me, and he just said, you teach. So again, I wanted to say absolutely not, but I said, tell me what to do. And since he couldn't tell me what to do, Donna gave me my marching orders. And I felt like I had no choice but to follow through. So I quickly learned how difficult it was to become a volunteer at the VA hospital. You would think I was trying to join the FBI. And by the time I had my TB test and my background check and my fingerprints, and when the ID would finally arrive, it would expire by the time I got the thing. So it was this constant sort of rat race, and it gave me a first-hand experience of what it might be like for somebody who's actually trying to get care from a VA hospital. I was only trying to volunteer. So I stepped aside from the VA and just went straight to the vet centers and started teaching those same gentlemen who I had met a couple of months prior. I had no clue how to teach. They had no clue how to do yoga. So we moved and breathed together. And while it kind of appeared we had nothing in common, we were fighting the same enemy. And that was our own personal battle. Those men taught me more than I could ever teach them. They taught me about love, friendship, courage, connection, and forgiveness. And there was something else that they taught me that was unspoken. And it was that they had returned from Vietnam and managed to push forward through the criticisms and whatever it was that they found at home, create lives for themselves, have successful businesses, families, grandchildren, and it was retirement that became their drop-off point. So what I saw before me is a group of men who lost their identity. And it really brought home how much I had been doing that same compartmentalizing with my own past, and that we had a lot in common. So I learned about the complexities of PTSD and how it can accumulate over time, and it doesn't have to necessarily be one big trauma. It could be a bunch of little small stuff. So I poured myself into learning everything I could about yoga, the spine, trauma, and pain. I began to find my place teaching fitness. I was teaching silver sneakers for active older adults, 65 and over. And I started teaching mindfulness to populations that I really resonated with, which would be chronically ill, chronic pain, those who were injured, or those who were subjected to trauma on a consistent basis. So that definitely includes veterans, active duty, and first responders of all kinds. I even managed to win an award in 2017. But the truth is I was dying inside. I was succeeding, but I was in so much pain. And I smiled through that pain. And it was not uncommon for me to go to a doctor and say, I'm in so much pain. And they would say, well, you look good. So whatever you're doing, just keep doing it, or go see your psychiatrist. So it started this internal blame, of which I already had. Basically thinking, well, I must be making it up. There must be nothing wrong with me, and I just have to keep pushing. My husband and I finally decided to see a surgeon here in Colorado. It turns out that he is a retired Army colonel, of course, and was a surgeon at Walter Reed. And he looked at us and basically just said, you're not fused. So that meant that my neck and my low back had never fused. And that all that time, it had been 7 years now, my body had held itself together by scar tissue, muscle spasm, and whatever that fear in me was of being good and being enough. So I was devastated, but I was also pretty excited to hear that there was a real reason why I might be in pain. About a year after that surgery, I was not fusing. So there's something systemically inside my body that either my nervous system is not allowing the bone growth or something. So I did just have my 5th spine surgery, and hopefully my last, on Veterans Day last year. I got to choose 11/11 because I love the number 11, and also because I had just marched in the Veterans Day parade in downtown Denver, and I felt like I was going to have all of you with me in the hospital. And by the way, I obtained the highest level of certification that I could, but I still hate yoga.
That's too bad.
So how am I still here? You. So life moves in circles of connection. And you are why I'm here. You and every public safety agency in their own way have saved my life. Even the sheriff department, although I didn't like them at the time. You are those who go in on purpose. And that's a heroic thing to me. You taught me that while I have not been to war, I understand what internal conflict and moral injury feels like. And while I can never pretend to know what combat is like, I can recognize it in your eyes. You taught me how to laugh at myself. You taught me how to keep going no matter what. You taught me how to serve, be honest, have faith, and to fight for myself. Sometimes you taught me that no action was the best action to take. You taught me I have purpose, and while we might not look the same, we are all part of the same tree. Same tree, different branches. So I regret nothing, except for not getting that $1 million from the best company. But I do believe that it would have killed me at that time. So I still struggle every day, emotionally and physically. And the cosmos have this way of bringing you into my life. And so it turns out that my psychiatrist is also a retired Army colonel. And he was head of behavioral health at Walter Reed. So we get along really well. I'm surrounded by you with love and support. I've got my mom and dad here and my husband here, and yet I still forget that I'm not alone. So how do I stay alive despite all of this? I call it tactical joy. Tactical in this regard just meaning on purpose. I teach about pain and staying alive with that pain. And I use what I call touchstones. So for me, this pink hair, I will forget that I have it. And the pink is less about standing out and more about giving myself a marker so that when my world goes dark, as it does over and over again, that it reminds me color was here and color will come back. I use my sense of humor, and I use little symbols. So I've got a cockroach tattooed onto my arm, and he's doing tree pose. He's purple, and he's got a purple heart formed in his tentacles. So I poured myself into service. And again, my brain would tell me I don't do anything. I started teaching for public safety and teaching police and fire, basically tactical breath work. Sometimes it looked like yoga, sometimes it looked like planks held for ungodly amounts of time. But the very last class that I taught was to a group of public safety cadets for the Denver Police Department, or the actual for Denver Public Safety. They hadn't decided. And it just so happened that the director of that program was in my class, and he was a Marine veteran. Young man, he's who introduced me to the Cooper's Troopers, and I just went once and basically kept going. I make them cookies, they call me the cookie lady, and this brings me to the VVA chapter 1071 where I met Stan. And they invited me to speak there, and again, a joyful yes. So that brought me here and introduced me to John and all of you. So all of these things sort of come full circle whether I like it or not. I'm also called the DPD NAG. NAG stands for Not Your Average Gal, or Necessary Assistance and Guidance. I'm helping the Denver Police Department start the very first retiree peer support program in the nation.
Wow.
And the fact that it doesn't exist is a whole other speech. But it's a place to start, and it's where I belong. And I don't just do this for the traditional retirees. I deal with medical retirees who didn't expect at age 40 to lose their ability to walk and work. So that is my mission. Battling Betty's was a hard decision for me because I normally dress like a boy on purpose. But when I found out that their mission really aligned with mine, it was a way for me to be able to wear a flag pin and celebrate veterans and celebrate these amazing events from our past that seem to have been forgotten sometimes. So life moves in circles. I'm marching in the Veterans Day Parade, and I met a volunteer for Soldiers Angels. As it turns out, he was a Vietnam veteran who came back from the war and was homeless, lost everything, and then he poured his life into service. And so had I not been walking in that parade, I wouldn't have run into that gentleman, and now I volunteer and write letters to the deployed. It's just one more thing that I can do for when my world goes dark and my blinders come up. So, we talked about pennies. You found a penny. My parents instilled in me the gift of being able to see a penny on the ground. And it used to be before I was blind that I would pick the penny up and look at the year and try to think something good that happened in my life. So I was trying to rewrite my story, flip the script. And if it was a year that I was not alive, I would think of somebody that I love and think, okay, something positive that I can think of. Now that I can't see anymore, I still look for pennies. And every time I find one, I imagine that it's a reminder or a sign that I must keep going. I imagine that it might be a life that I can affect. And not necessarily a life that I can save, because I can't do that alone. But what strikes me is that pennies have the same value no matter where you find them. No matter how old, no matter how tarnished, no matter how shiny, you can't have $1 million without having a penny. So it's a way for me to think about this giant task of mindfulness that they tell us that we need to do. So for me, that's going out and finding pennies. And if I happen to find a silver coin, I imagine maybe that's the number of lives I've touched. So the thing about finding pennies is that you can't find them unless you go out and look. And that can be pretty vulnerable for most of us, at least it is for me. Can't find them if we don't go out and look, and we can't if we don't go in on purpose, connect with each other, find hope, and defy our own boundaries. So, circles and trees. I call my psychiatrist the kernel of truth. I showed him this picture, I don't know if you can see it, of me dressed up as a Batlin Betty. I've got victory rolls, and I'm peeking behind a tree. And he just took his glasses down and looked at me real quiet and said, "They have no idea, do they?" And he meant most people. Because I present as whatever it is I present as. But I do have to work really hard at getting out, looking for those pennies, and finding those sources of connection, so that maybe my experience can help somebody else with theirs. I'm going to have you do a tactical joy technique with me. It's going to require that you uncross your legs, please. Both feet on the floor. You will not be doing any movement other than just rolling your shoulders a couple of times. Check out any snap, crackle, pops that come up, and then me too, and then roll them forward a couple times. So this is a breathing technique I like to call lion's breath, T-style. It's an inhale through the nose. If your nose is stuffy, feel free to use your mouth. A pause at the top. And the exhale is goofy. You open your mouth wide, stick your tongue out, and stretch the face. We're going to do that 3 times and then reverse it. And there's no expectation of anything at all other than for you to do it. So feet on the floor, roll the shoulders, take a big breath in with me through the nose, pause, exhale, open the mouth wide, stick the tongue out, stretch the face. Good, 2 more times. Inhale through the nose, pause, fire breathing dragon, let it out. Garlic breath. 1 more time. Take a breath in through the nose. Breathe in, pause, and exhale as wide as you can. Good. Now, reverse that. Open the mouth wide, stick the tongue out, breathe in, and exhale out of the nose. If you did not get at least a tiny bit of a smile creeping on your face, I'd like to see you after dinner. You've now witnessed the power of something as simple as the breath. So I'm going to leave you with some marching orders myself. Follow signs, but look for directions along the way. The map does not always tell the truth about the territory. Go out and look for pennies. Go in on purpose. No matter what, keep going. If you get stuck, remember left foot, right foot, breathe. If you're still stuck, remember to breathe in, breathe out, and repeat. I'm going to leave you with a poem that I wrote about that tree. and it's called trauma trees. The trauma trees, roots, branches, leaves, we all carry these. It's a family disease. But these trees do bear fruit. It can be found at their roots. And then we see, once on our knees, these trees are we indeed. Same tree, different branches, falling, dying, growing, changing. Same soil greeting roots, same sun shines on seeds to sow. Sprinkle some random water, just because from time to time, who knows, you might be helping someone else's tree to grow. Thank you.